Okay, children, today I'm going to be reading to you a selection from this book by Chris Hedges called Losing Moses on the Freeway, The 10 Commandments in America. It's a book that has 10 chapters, surprisingly, each one devoted to a different commandment from the Old Testament. I'm going to read to you a section from chapter 3, which is the third commandment about keeping the Sabbath holy. For the first half of the chapter, Mr. Hedges describes a rather horrific experience in boarding school in Massachusetts, which part of which included required attendance at church every Sunday. And that brings him into a discussion of the Sabbath, and I'll read that to you. I see now that we never celebrated the Sabbath. The Sabbath is about honoring those we love and those who love us, honoring the essence of the divine. By turning away from work, from the world, to cherish those we love, we honor the Sabbath. The Sabbath is not about one day. It is about taking time for a daughter's basketball game, a son's track race, a dinner where a family talks. The Sabbath is a moment when a couple sits on a bench and reaffirms love. The Sabbath is the time set aside to nurture all that gives us meaning in life, all that makes life worth living. The Sabbath is the recognition that work, that all the hours we spend making a living, are in fact the means to this end, to the ability to have and sustain love. When we ignore the Sabbath, we destroy that which we should be working to achieve. Institutional religion has often attempted to confine the Sabbath to the idol of the physical church, the synagogue or the mosque, to restrict its celebration to within its walls. It has sought to make the act of worship holy, limited, and contained in a space being. And in this, it has divorced the Sabbath from the reality of daily life, from the need to love and be loved. Sabbath rituals, as in my boarding school, become in the hands of the institutions sterile and empty, mocking the purpose of the day. Honoring the Sabbath is one of the most important of the commandments. It occupies a third of the text of the commandments. Our restless lives cry out for the peace of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is the culmination of our life, the moment when we pay homage to forces of creation. And if we're unable to experience this spiritual transcendence, if we are cut off from love, as we were as boys, then our spiritual and moral life shrivels and decays. The Sabbath was the darkest day of the week for us because it was a reminder of what we were denied. In the commandments, the word holy is applied to only one word, the Sabbath. The Sabbath is not about being in a particular place at a particular time. It is about honoring relationships. It is not about male or female, husband or wife, children or parents, at least not exclusively. It is about the power of love to transform us. To ignore the Sabbath is to ignore the source of life. The rituals we carry out during the Sabbath connect us to those who, performing much the same ritual, have honored in the past the transforming power of love. It is a way of tying us to the greater community of humankind, the generations lost in the dust of time, those who passed their love on to us. The Sabbath calls us away from the lies and temptation used to empower us so we can give ourselves to empower others. Suppression of a desire is considered a sacrilege that must inevitably avenge itself in the form of some mental disorder, Rabbi Abraham Heschel wrote. We worship not one, but a whole pantheon of needs, and have come to look upon moral and spiritual norms as nothing but personal desires in disguise. The Sabbath is the battle for transcendence, for freedom from the pull of needs. It is the battle for life. It is the battle to defeat that which destroys love, the idolatry of desire, the hard and concrete cases of injustice, all that belittles the worth of other human beings. The boarding school held before us idols. It spurred us forward to meet their demands. Religion was about abstractions that killed the vitality and passion of faith. Religion was never allowed to get in the way of the demands made by the idols of success and power. The prophets spent their days raging against corruption and abuse of power by those in the royal palaces and courts, the mistreatment of the poor, of widows and orphans, in short, the hard and difficult struggle by the oppressed to achieve freedom and dignity. They were angry, indignant over minor infractions. The prophets, I understood years later, would have been standing on the bottom of the hill with us, not at the top with the school officials who ruled us. But the message of the prophets, like all messages passed to us, was twisted to pressure us to conform. The Sabbath is not about rules. These are imposed by institutions which seek conformity and control. Religious authorities in the wars I covered willingly put their institutions in the service of nationalist or ethnic violence. They legitimized the abuse and murder of others outside the faith. They sanctified war. They turned their religious texts into venomous calls for death and vengeance. Christians, Jews, and Muslims were indistinguishable in championing ruthless crusades in the name of their faith. This was as true in the Middle East as in the Balkans. Many faiths turned the Sabbath into a ceremony used to nurture hatred and revenge, mocking the essence of the commandment. Conformity to order and ritual, a dangerous self-worship, took the place of honoring the Sabbath. Those who honor the Sabbath must often do it surreptitiously. To honor the Sabbath in a way that is meaningful is often to defy religious authorities. It requires us to break rules rather than enforce them, to be inclusive where we are told to exclude. There are those who honor the Sabbath without naming it. There are those who honor it in a catacomb religion, one where orthodoxy is replaced by authenticity. Honoring the Sabbath often means defying the attempts of religious institutions to define it.